The story begins with Leela, a young woman who works as an English teacher. She had endured domestic abuse at the hands of her husband for many years. When her patience finally ran out, she decided to divorce him. Even after leaving her past behind, Leela continued to struggle with emotional stress and loneliness. To start a new life, she moved to a new city and got a job as an English teacher at a local high school. On her first day at the school, the principal introduced her to the history teacher, who was tasked with showing her around the classrooms. In another part of the same city, we meet Jason, a 19-year-old boy who lives with his family. His family was middle class, consisting of his parents, a younger sister, and an elder brother. Financial hardship had always been a part of their lives. Jason's elder brother, in pursuit of earning more money, got involved in drug trafficking and was eventually arrested and sent to prison. Jason's parents were determined not to let their younger son follow the same path. They constantly encouraged him to focus on his studies and build a better future. However, Jason had no interest in academics. For him, school had become a burden. Now he too had started following in his elder brother's footsteps and got involved in selling drugs illegally. He wanted to earn money quickly to support his younger sister's education. At school, Leela was teaching her class. Jason was also in the same class. He always sat in the back row. Outside the classroom, most of his time was spent wandering carelessly with friends. One day when Leela was sitting alone in the classroom, Andrew, the school's physical education teacher, approached her. He complimented her unique and impactful teaching style. Leela responded with a smile, and a lighthearted conversation began between them. That night, Leela called her mother. It was a new city with new people and no one she could truly call her own. As soon as she heard her mother's voice, tears welled up in her eyes. The next day after school, Jason came to Leela himself. With a bit of hesitation, he said that he needed help with writing. When Leela asked about the topic, Jason replied, "I have to write something about myself, but I don't know where to begin." Sensing his hesitation, Leela said very gently, "You can share anything with me. Whatever you say will stay just between us." But Jason perhaps wasn't ready yet. He quietly lowered his head and walked away without saying a word. Leela was concerned by his behavior. She started to follow him, but before she could say anything, the history teacher stopped her and said, "Students like him never change." Leela was hurt by that remark. She firmly responded, "To me, every student is equal." The next day, while Leela was reviewing student files, she came across Jason's. He was a newly transferred student, and his academic record was very poor. This deepened Leela's concern. She decided she would pay special attention to Jason and do everything she could to guide him onto the right path. A few days later, the class was asked to read out poems they had written. When it was Jason's turn, he stood up nervously. But as he began reading his poem, his voice carried pain, truth, and depth. Leela listened to every line attentively, and it touched her deeply. After class ended, Leela went up to him and genuinely praised his poem. She said, "Your writing is very special, Jason." Jason smiled for the first time. It was perhaps the first time someone had appreciated his work so deeply. The next day at school, Andrew came up to Leela again. He invited her to join him at a pub that evening. Leela paused for a moment, then nodded in agreement. That evening, Leela and Andrew had some drinks together, chatted and danced. Leela was laughing freely after a long time. She didn't know that Jason was also at the same pub with some friends. From a corner, he was watching Leela smile. There was a strange glimmer in his eyes. It was the first time he had seen Leela so happy as she danced and smiled. After a while, Leela left the pub and drove home in her car. The next day, Leela saw Jason loitering outside the school, having skipped class. Unhappy with his behavior, she later called him into the classroom and firmly said, "Don't skip class again." After that, Leela made him an offer. She wanted to take an extra 30-minute session after school. Surprisingly, Jason agreed. From that day on, Leela began teaching him after school hours. But instead of studying, Jason's eyes would often be fixed on Leela. He realized he was beginning to feel something for Leela. Leela was completely unaware of all this. That night, Leela sat alone in her apartment. Her heart was heavy, and there was a sense of loneliness inside her. Just then, there was a knock at the door. When she opened the door, Leela was shocked. Jason was standing there. His face was swollen, blood was dripping from his nose, his clothes were disheveled, and his eyes looked tired, as if he had just come out of a fight. Worried, Leela immediately let him in. Jason said, "I can't go home in this state, just need to clean up a bit, then I'll leave." Leela asked, "What happened to you?" Brushing off the question, Jason simply said, "Just a small fight, nothing major." As he cleaned himself up and prepared to leave, Leela stopped him. It was raining heavily outside the window. "I'll drop you home," she said. Jason nodded, and the two of them set out together. On the way, Leela tried to start start a conversation. "Tell me about your family," she asked. But Jason turned his eyes away and said, "I don't want to talk about that." After a short while, Jason said, "Stop the car here." He had brought Leela to a scenic viewpoint in the city from where the entire city glowed in sparkling lights. The view was breathtaking. Standing there, Jason suddenly said, "I saw you dancing in the pub. Teach me too, please." Leela smiled, laughed at first, then said, "All right." They started dancing lightly. But as Jason moved closer, he began to touch Leela gently, as if he was expressing another emotion under the guise of dancing. Leela immediately pulled away. She said firmly, "This isn't right, Jason. I'm your teacher. We must never cross that line. This should not happen again." Jason silently nodded. He didn't want to stop spending time with Leela. Leela, too, had started enjoying spending time with him, but she wasn't able to accept it even to herself. Without saying much, she dropped Jason off at his home and returned. The next morning, Jason's mother saw his exam results and was surprised and happy. Jason's marks had improved significantly. Excitedly, she asked, "How did you manage this?" Jason smiled and said, "It all happened because of my new teacher. She helped me." His mother was very happy to hear this. She said, "I'll definitely thank your teacher at the next parent-teacher meeting." Meanwhile, Jason found himself repeatedly visiting Leela's social media profile. That same evening, Leela went to the same pub again with Andrew. Coincidentally, Jason was there too with his friends, but his eyes were fixed only on Leela. While sitting at the table, Andrew began asking Leela questions about her past, especially about her ex-husband and the reason for their divorce. These questions started to make Leela uncomfortable. Smiling politely, she excused herself and went to the bathroom. As soon as she stepped out of the bathroom, Jason grabbed her hand and kissed her passionately without saying a word. For a moment, Leela kissed him back, but then she came to her senses. She suddenly pulled away. She returned to Andrew and made up an excuse, saying that her mother had suddenly fallen ill. As she stepped outside, Jason followed her. Leela initially refused to meet him and said from behind the door, "Jason, go away." But Jason pleaded, "Please, I need to talk." Leela opened the door. Jason took the opportunity to pour out his heart. He expressed his feelings openly. He kissed her again, and they fell in love with each other. Leela had begun to realize that she was developing feelings for Jason, but she clearly told Jason, "No one should find out about us." Jason agreed. He smiled faintly. The next day, Jason went to meet his drug suppliers. His old life wasn't completely behind him yet. Later, during an extra class, Jason tried to kiss Leela again. Leela immediately stopped him and said, "We can't do this in public. No one must know anything." Jason accepted her words but smiled and said, "Then close your eyes." As soon as Leela closed her eyes, Jason put a delicate chain around her neck, a small gift. There was a sparkle in Leela's eyes. She smiled softly but sincerely. That night, Leela called her mother. Slowly, she began to open up and shared what was in her heart. Her mother was silent for a while, then asked, "Does he make you happy?" Leela softly replied, "Yes, very much." Her mother sighed deeply and said, "Then marry someone who truly makes you happy." The next day, Leela and Jason met in secret. They reached a quiet lakeside where the breeze brought peace and the water's ripples seemed to whisper something. Jason even took pictures of Leela and of them together on his phone. As they sat by the lake, Jason finally asked, "Why did you come to this city?" Leela remained silent for a moment, then took a deep breath and said, "My married life was terrible. To start afresh." Pain was evident in Jason's eyes. He held her hand and said, "I'll never hurt you. I promise." That night, while Jason was showering at home, his mother quietly checked his phone. The moment she opened the gallery, she was stunned. There were pictures of Jason and Leela so close that anyone could tell their relationship wasn't just teacher-student. The next day, during the parent-teacher meeting at school, Leela asked Andrew for a file. As he handed it to her, he smiled and said, "We're becoming good friends, aren't we?" Leela smiled faintly, but her mind was in turmoil. That evening, Jason's mother came to the school and sat down with Leela. Leela tried to keep the conversation light, talking about Jason's academic improvement, but his mother suddenly snapped. "I sent my son to the school for studies, not to chase after a teacher." She stood up angrily and said, "It would be best if you stay away from him." Then she stormed off without listening to anything more. The principal sensed the tension. She came over and asked, "Is everything all right?" Leela lied and said she was just in a hurry, but standing at a distance, Nancy, the history teacher, had seen everything. That same night when Jason returned home, his mother asked him directly, "Tell me the truth. What's going on between you and that teacher?" Jason replied without hesitation, "I'm in love with her." His mother's face filled with anger. "You have to end this right now. She's your teacher. She's taking advantage of you." Jason protested. "It's not like that, Mom. You don't understand." The argument escalated so much that Jason stormed out of the house in anger. Meanwhile, Leela was on the phone with her mother. For the first time, she admitted the truth. The boy, The one I'm in love with. He's my student. Her mother was stunned. This is wrong, Leela. You need to end this relationship immediately. At that very moment, Jason arrived at Leela's house. But this time, as soon as she opened the door, she lashed out at him. Why did you tell your mom about us? I told you. No one should find out. Jason was shocked. I didn't say anything. Leela, her voice trembling, said, "Leave me alone, Jason." Jason couldn't say a word and left. A few hours later, he returned, holding a bouquet of flowers. Seeing Jason standing at the door, after a few moments of silence, she opened the door, and this time she forgave him. That night, Leela and Jason make love once again. The next morning, as they sit together, a look of concern appears in Leela's eyes. "We need to think about what we're doing." Hearing this, Jason replies, "I have some money. We could leave this city, start a new life." The next day at school, Jason is holding Leela's hand, talking to her when Andrew spots them. He realizes why Jason had been so drawn to Leela. That evening, as Leela stays late at school to finish some work, Andrew finds an opportunity and corners her alone. He tries to force himself on her. Leela is in shock. No one had imagined Andrew was capable of such a thing. Terrified and shattered, Leela returns home. A little while later, Jason comes to her house. One look at her, and he knows something is wrong. "What happened?" he asks. Leela can't hold it in anymore and tells him everything. Jason's fists clench in rage. "You need to go to the police," he says, but Leela lowers her head. "Andrew threatened me. If I say anything, he'll expose our relationship and ruin me." The next day at school, Jason loses control the moment he sees Andrew. He lashes out, beating him to the ground. The situation turns chaotic. Within minutes, the police arrive and arrest Jason. Later, his mother bails him out from the police station. As they step outside, Leela is waiting nearby. Jason's mother looks at her furiously and says, "Stay away from my son." Then she grabs Jason's hand and walks off with him. At school, Leela is heartbroken. Everything is falling apart. That very night, Leela takes a bold step. She confronts Andrew. "What you did to me was caught on the school's CCTV cameras," she says. Andrew's face turns pale. "If you don't withdraw the charges against Jason, I'll take that footage straight to the police." Andrew has no choice. Reluctantly, he drops all accusations against Jason. The next day, Jason comes to Leela's house. "I know the case is over. I just wanted to see you." But there's sadness in Leela's eyes. She softly says, "I'm leaving the city." Jason's face falls. "What? Why?" Leela takes a deep breath. "Because now I realize this relationship is wrong. I can't do this anymore." Jason's heart shatters. "Please, don't go." His voice trembles. Tears well up in Leela's eyes too, but she stands firm in her decision. "You still have your whole life ahead of you, Jason. You need to move on." She turns around and slowly walks away. Jason returns home and breaks down in tears in front of his mother. She holds him and tries to comfort him. Meanwhile, Leela sits on the bus, watching the city fade away behind her, as tears fall silently from her eyes. And with that, this story reaches its emotional end.